The Bank of England once received banknotes so perfect its own experts declared them real. They were forged by prisoners inside a Nazi camp. This was the largest counterfeiting operation in history. A secret Nazi plan to print the enemy's money and destroy it from the inside. The forgers were Jewish prisoners, hand-picked from concentration camps. For one reason: before the war, they had been printers, engravers, and bankers. They were chosen for their skill, but also, coldly, because they were considered expendable. Whatever they built, they were never meant to survive it. Their workshop sat inside Sachsenhausen, a camp near Berlin. Behind the barbed wire, 2 wooden barracks had been turned into a mint. The target was the British pound, at the time the most trusted currency on earth, and the hardest banknote in the world to fake. A Bank of England note hid about 150 tiny security marks. To forge one, you had to solve all of them. Watermark, the exact paper, the engraving of Britannia, the serial numbers that a real bank could check against its own ledgers. Miss any single detail, and a teller would spot the fake in seconds. The prisoners had to be perfect, or they were worthless. And yet this insane project almost worked. To understand how close it came, you have to know what Hitler actually wanted from it. The original idea was not to spend the fake money. It was to weaponize it, to drop it from planes over Britain. Imagine millions of flawless 5-pound notes fluttering down onto British cities. People would grab them, they would spend them, and prices would explode. This is economic warfare. Flood a country with money, and each note buys less. Savings evaporate. Trust in the currency collapses. One Nazi proposal reportedly imagined dropping the equivalent of 30 billion pounds, enough fake cash to bury the entire British economy. The plan began in 1940 under the codename Operation Andreas. German intelligence started quietly cracking the pound, note by note. But by the time the fakes were ready, the plan changed completely. And the reason reveals what the Nazis really valued by then. Germany no longer had planes to spare for dropping paper. Every aircraft was needed at the front. So the money found a new job. In 1942, Heinrich Himmler revived the scheme with a colder purpose. Not to bomb Britain with cash, but to spend it. Fake pounds could buy real weapons, real gold, and real secrets, laundering the Reich's ambitions through the world's most respected currency. But to spend fake pounds anywhere, they first had to be flawless. And that job fell to the prisoners in barracks 18 and 19. Roughly 140 prisoners worked the presses in 2 12-hour shifts behind a fence sealed off from the rest of the camp. They ate slightly better. They slept in real beds. In a death camp, they were kept alive, as long as they stayed useful. Every man understood the arithmetic. The moment the operation ended, so did the reason to let them live. Their skill was their only shield. Leading the forgery was a professional criminal named Salomon Smolyanov, a man who had been jailed before the war for counterfeiting. The Nazis had accidentally assembled a dream team of engravers, photographers, and printers, the very people they had imprisoned for being Jewish. First, they had to make the paper. Real notes used a specific rag fiber. So the prisoners rebuilt the recipe until the texture matched. Then the watermark, the faint image you see when you hold a note to the light. Recreating it took months of failed attempts. They engraved Britannia by hand, matched the ink, and cracked the secret formula behind the serial numbers a real bank would accept. Finally, they aged each note by hand, folding, dirtying, and passing them around. Because brand new bills would look suspicious in wartime pockets. The result was the finest forgery ever made. But some of these men and their stowaway decided to reteaching that continues shape the Sturzen was secret. After the cessation of the overness but L formations. But some of these men were quietly planning to make sure it never fully succeeded. By the end, the presses had produced millions of notes, worth at least £132 million, an almost unimaginable sum then. Some estimates run far higher. In today's money, the fakes would be worth billions, possibly the most valuable pile of counterfeit cash ever created. The notes were so convincing that expert examiners passed them as real. The Bank of England judged them among the most dangerous forgeries ever. So where did all this fake money go? This is where the Nazis' new plan, spending it instead of dropping it, came alive. They used the fakes to pay one of the most famous spies of the war, a valet codenamed Cicero, working inside the British embassy. Cicero photographed secret British documents in Ankara and was paid a fortune for them, a fortune that turned out to be counterfeit. The forged pounds also helped fund the daring raid that freed the Italian dictator Mussolini from a mountaintop prison in 1943. Fake money was quietly financing real history, spies, weapons, and rescues. While nobody in Britain realized their currency had been broken, the pound sterling was, in a very real sense, under silent attack. And for a long time, the attack was working perfectly. Perfect fakes should be undetectable. So how did the Bank of England ever discover that millions of its notes were lies? The answer was not a flaw in the paper or the ink. It was something the forgers could never fully control: the serial numbers. Every real note carries a unique serial number. The bank records each one, so the same number should never appear on two different notes. The forgers had to invent serial numbers, and sometimes their invented numbers collided with real ones the Bank of England had already issued. In 1943, a bank clerk examined a note and froze, because its serial number showed that this exact note had already been paid. The same note could not exist twice. One of them had to be a forgery, and it was so good, nobody could tell which. That single collision unraveled everything. The bank slowly realized its own currency had been infiltrated on a massive, invisible, and terrifying scale. In April 1943, the Bank of England took drastic action. It stopped issuing every note worth £10 or more. Think about that. The enemy's forgery was so effective that Britain pulled its own high-value banknotes out of circulation to defend itself. The scars lasted for decades. A new £5 note with better security did not arrive until 1957, 12 years after the war ended. But as the bank fought back, the war was ending. And that raised a darker question. What would happen to the forgers now? Remember, these men were only alive because they were useful. As the operation wound down, their usefulness and their protection was disappearing. Here is where their quiet resistance mattered. Ordered to also forge the American dollar, the prisoners deliberately dragged their feet, sabotaging their own work. They introduced tiny errors, stalled, and faked problems. Because every day the dollar stayed unfinished was another day the war might end first. Their gamble worked. A truly perfect dollar was never mass-produced, and as the Allies closed in, the whole operation was hurriedly shut down. The Nazis loaded the plates and crates of fake notes onto trucks and dumped them into a deep alpine lake called Lake Toplitz. An execution order for the prisoners was issued, but through confusion, delay, and a too literal reading of orders, it was never carried out. In May 1945, American troops liberated the surviving forgers. The men who printed the enemy's fortune had, against every odds, lived. Years later, divers hauled crates of the counterfeit notes from the bottom of Lake Toplitz, proof that the story had been real all along. The commander, Bernhard Kruger, was never punished, because forging an enemy's money, incredibly, was not classed as a war crime. The greatest fake money ever made couldn't buy the Reichstime. But decades later, one nation would try the same trick on the dollar.